Matt Thompson, 31, was the kind of guy Austin locals leaned on when chaos struck. As a paramedic, he'd earned a quiet legend status after pulling a kid from a mangled car during a storm last spring, his hands steady despite the rain-soaked wreckage. His wife, Sophie, 29, was the spark in their shared life, an event planner who turned community festivals into vibrant celebrations, often for free, just to see her neighbors smile. 3 years into their marriage, they were the couple everyone rooted for, hosting backyard barbecues, crushing it at trivia nights, and always quick to help a friend move a couch or plan a fundraiser. Their life in Austin, Texas, was a rhythm of hard work and easy laughter, a balance that felt like it could last forever. But Sophie was restless. She loved Matt, loved their life, but lately the routine felt like a treadmill, steady, predictable, safe. She craved something to jolt her awake, something to remind her of the wild streak she'd tamed since their wedding day. Over breakfast one morning, as Matt scrolled through his phone for the latest Rangers game scores, Sophie set down her coffee mug with a clink. "What if we ditch the usual and go big this year?" she said, her voice bright with an edge Matt hadn't heard in a while. "Miami. Beaches, nightlife, a real adventure." Matt looked up, catching the glint in her eyes. He'd been swamped at work, racing from one emergency call to the next, and the idea of a break with Sophie, just the two of them, sparked something in him too. "Let's do it," he said, grinning. "You pick the spot, I'm in." Within days, Sophie had booked them into a sleek South Beach hotel, the kind with a rooftop pool and a reputation for turning vacations into stories. Matt trusted her knack for planning. She'd turned their second anniversary into a surprise camping trip under the stars, so he left the details to her. As they packed, Sophie buzzed with excitement, tossing guidebooks into her bag and rattling off plans for boat tours and salsa nights. Matt, folding his gear, felt a quiet thrill. This trip could be a reset, a chance to reconnect away from sirens and schedules. They landed in Miami on a humid June afternoon, the air thick with salt and possibility. The hotel's lobby pulsed with energy, guests checking in, music drifting from the bar. Sophie's eyes lit up as they stepped into their room, the ocean view stretching wide beyond the balcony. "This is it, Matt," she said, spinning toward him. "This is what we needed." He pulled her close, her enthusiasm infectious, and for a moment, it felt like they were back in their dating days, when every moment carried a charge. The next morning, they joined a group tour arranged by the hotel, led by Diego, a local guide with a quick laugh and a knack for making every stop feel like a secret unveiled. Diego, in his late 20s, had a way of commanding attention, weaving stories about Miami's history as they trekked through vibrant windwood murals and quiet mangrove trails. Matt liked him. He was sharp, respectful, and knew when to let the group soak in the scenery. Sophie, though, hung on Diego's every word, asking questions about hidden beaches and local legends, her laughter a little louder than usual. Matt noticed, but chalked it up to her excitement. She'd always been the social one, the first to strike up a conversation with a stranger. Besides, he was here to relax, not overthink. Their first full day was a blur of sun and exploration. Diego led them to a tucked-away lagoon, where the water shimmered like glass. Sophie dove in, splashing Matt playfully, her grin wide as she floated in the shallows. Diego shared a story about the area's old pirate hideouts, and Sophie peppered him with questions, her curiosity pulling her closer to the guide. Matt stayed back, snapping photos of the mangroves, content to let Sophie shine. But as the day wore on, he caught her glancing at Diego a beat too long, her smile lingering when the guide pointed out a hidden trail. It pricked at him, a small thorn of unease, but he pushed it down. They were on vacation, and trust was the foundation they built. That evening, Diego mentioned a private boat tour to a secluded beach, a spot most tourists never saw. "It's magic at sunset," he said, his eyes flicking to Sophie. "You'll feel like the only two people in the world." Sophie clapped her hands, turning to Matt. "We have to do it. Please?" Matt nodded, caught up in her enthusiasm. "Book it," he said, and Diego gave a quick nod, promising to handle the details. As they walked back to the hotel, Sophie looped her arm through Matt's, her excitement buzzing. But Matt couldn't shake the feeling that something was shifting, a subtle crack in the rhythm they'd always shared. He told himself it was nothing, just the heat, the newness of the place. Tomorrow, he thought, they'd find their stride again. Unbeknownst to Matt, Sophie's restlessness was no longer just a craving for adventure. It was a hunger for something she couldn't name, something that felt alive in Diego's easy charm and the way he seemed to see her, really see her, in a way Matt hadn't in months. As they prepped for the boat tour, Sophie's excitement carried an edge, a spark of recklessness that would soon set their perfect world ablaze. The Miami sun hung low, painting the sky in streaks of orange as Matt and Sophie boarded Diego's small boat for the private tour. The vessel cut through the turquoise waves, heading toward a secluded beach Diego had promised was unlike anything they'd seen. Matt leaned against the railing, the sea breeze easing the tension he'd felt the day before. Sophie sat near the bow, her eyes fixed on the horizon, her excitement palpable but tinged with something Matt couldn't quite place. Diego steered with ease, pointing out a pod of dolphins trailing the boat, his voice carrying over the hum of the engine. Sophie laughed, leaning forward to snap photos, her enthusiasm pulling her into every moment Diego crafted. As they reached the hidden beach, the boat anchored in a quiet cove where mangroves hugged the shore and the sand gleamed white. Diego led them onto the beach, explaining its untouched beauty, a place locals revered for its serenity. Matt felt the calm settle into him, his paramedic's instinct for high alert fading. He wandered toward the water's edge, letting the warm waves lap at his feet, while Sophie lingered near Diego, asking about the best spots for a swim. "There's a shallow pool just past those rocks," Diego said, pointing. "Perfect for a quick dip." Sophie's eyes lit up. "I'm going," she announced, glancing at Matt. "You coming?" Matt waved her off, content to stay put. "I'll chill here. Go have fun." He trusted her, trusted the moment. But the thorn of unease from yesterday pricked again, sharper now. Sophie and Diego disappeared around the rocks, their voices fading into the soft crash of waves. Matt sat on the sand, scrolling through his phone, checking messages from his Austin crew. Minutes stretched into a half hour, then longer. The sun dipped lower, and the quiet began to feel heavy. He stood, brushing sand from his hands, and called out for Sophie. No response. He walked toward the rocks, his steps quickening, a faint pulse of worry in his chest. As he rounded the bend, he saw them, Sophie and Diego, standing close in the shallow pool. Too close. Sophie's hand rested on Diego's arm, her laughter bright but intimate, the kind she used to save for Matt in their early days. Diego stepped back, his posture stiff, but Sophie leaned in, her voice low. Matt froze, his breath catching. It wasn't a kiss, not yet, but the air between them crackled with intent. He called her name, sharp and clear. Sophie spun around, her face flushing as she stepped away from Diego. "Just talking," she said quickly, splashing through the water toward him. Diego muttered something about checking the boat and slipped away, leaving Matt and Sophie alone. Matt's eyes locked on hers, searching for an explanation. "What was that?" he asked, his voice steady but tight. Sophie shrugged, too casual. "Nothing, Matt. We were just joking around. Relax." Her deflection stung, but Matt swallowed his doubt. He didn't want to fight, not here, not now. They returned to the boat in silence, Diego keeping his distance, his usual charm muted. The ride back was tense, the dolphins long gone, the sunset no longer a shared marvel. Back at the hotel, Sophie threw herself into the evening's plans, suggesting a salsa club Diego had mentioned. Matt agreed, hoping the music and crowd would reset the unease gnawing at him. The club pulsed with rhythm, couples spinning under neon lights. Sophie dove into the dance floor, pulling Matt along, her energy infectious but forced. Diego joined their group, invited by the hotel's tour package, and Sophie gravitated toward him again, laughing as he taught her a quick step. Matt watched from the bar, nursing a soda, his paramedic's calm masking the storm building inside. He told himself it was nothing, Sophie was just caught up in the vibe, the freedom of the trip. But when she slipped away with Diego to grab some air outside, leaving Matt with the group, the thorn became a blade. Outside, Sophie and Diego stood under a palm tree, the club's music muffled. She felt the Miami night pulling at her, loosening the rules she'd lived by in Austin. Diego's stories, his ease, his attention, they fed the restless hunger she'd carried for months. "You're different here," Diego said, his voice low. "Freer." Sophie smiled, stepping closer, her heart racing with a mix of thrill and guilt. She didn't plan it, didn't think it through. She leaned in, her lips brushing his in a fleeting, reckless kiss. Diego hesitated, then returned it, the moment brief but electric. They pulled apart, Sophie's breath uneven, Diego's eyes wide with surprise and regret. "We shouldn't," he muttered, stepping back. Sophie nodded, but the damage was done. Inside, Matt felt the minutes drag. When Sophie returned, her cheeks flushed, Diego trailing behind, Matt's instincts screamed. Her smile was too bright, her excuses too quick, she needed air, she said, the club was too warm. Matt nodded, saying nothing, but his mind replayed the scene at the pool, now layered with this new absence. He didn't confront her, not yet. His training had taught him to stay calm under pressure, to gather facts before acting. But the facts were piling up, and they pointed to a truth he wasn't ready to face. The next morning, Diego approached Matt at breakfast, his face tight with guilt. "We need to talk," he said, his voice low. Sophie was still in their room, packing for the day's tour. Matt followed Diego to a quiet corner, his gut twisting. Diego didn't waste words. "Yesterday, outside the club, Sophie kissed me. I didn't stop it right away, and I'm sorry. It was a mistake." The words hit Matt like a physical blow, but his face stayed stone. Years of handling emergencies had taught him to lock down emotion, to focus on the next step. "Thanks for telling me," he said, his voice flat. Diego nodded, looking like he'd shed a weight, but Matt felt one settle on his shoulders. He returned to the table, his coffee cold, his mind racing. Sophie bounded in, all smiles, talking about the day's plans, a kayak trip, a market visit. Matt watched her, his trust cracking like thin ice. He didn't yell, didn't accuse. Instead, he made a decision. This wasn't his fault, and he wouldn't let it break him. The trip wasn't over, but something else was starting, a plan, a line drawn in the sand. Sophie's recklessness had set a fire, and Matt, the paramedic who saved others, would now save himself. Matt sat at the edge of the kayak, paddle resting across his knees, as the group glided through Miami's mangrove tunnels. The water was calm, reflecting the morning sun, but his mind churned. Diego's confession from breakfast replayed like a siren, Sophie's kiss, her reckless choice, Diego's guilt. Matt's paramedic training kept his face neutral, his movements steady, but inside, his trust in Sophie was crumbling. She paddled ahead, laughing with another couple in the group, oblivious to the storm brewing in Matt's chest. Diego, guiding from the lead kayak, kept his eyes on the water, avoiding Matt's gaze. The air between them was thick, the unspoken truth a weight no one acknowledged. The tour wound through narrow channels, the mangroves closing in like a maze. Sophie's voice carried back, bright and carefree, as she asked Diego about local wildlife. Matt watched her, searching for signs of guilt, but she seemed untouched, as if the kiss outside the salsa club was a fleeting whim she'd already dismissed. His jaw tightened. He'd spent years saving lives under pressure, car accidents, heart attacks, fires. But this was a different kind of emergency, one he couldn't fix with a bandage or a stretcher. He needed a plan, and he needed it now. As the group paused at a small clearing for a break, Matt pulled Sophie aside, away from the others. The mangroves shielded them, the hum of insects filling the silence. "We need to talk," he said, his voice low, controlled. Sophie's smile faltered, sensing the shift. "What's up?" she asked, her tone too light. Matt didn't flinch. "Diego told me. About last night. The kiss." Her eyes widened, then dropped to the ground. For a moment she said nothing, her fingers twisting together. Then, in a rush, she spoke. "It was nothing, Matt. A stupid mistake. I got caught up in the moment, the music, the vibe. It didn't mean anything." Matt's stare was unrelenting, his paramedic's calm masking the ache in his gut. "You crossed the line, Sophie. You chose to." Her eyes welled up, but he didn't soften. "I'm sorry," she whispered, stepping closer, reaching for his hand. He pulled back, the motion sharp but not angry, just final. "I need space," he said. "We'll finish this trip, but after that, I don't know." Sophie's tears spilled over, but Matt turned away, rejoining the group. He wasn't ready to unravel everything here, not in front of strangers, not with Diego nearby. The kayak tour ended, and the group returned to the hotel. Sophie tried to stick close to Matt, her apologies coming in waves. Over lunch, on the walk back, in their room. "It was one mistake, Matt. I swear it won't happen again." He listened, nodding, but his responses were short, his mind elsewhere. He wasn't just hurt, he was recalibrating. Trust, once broken, didn't patch up with words. He spent the afternoon alone, walking South Beach, the ocean's rhythm steadying him. By evening, he made a decision. He wouldn't let Sophie's choice define him. He'd act, not react. That night, the hotel hosted a group dinner on the beach, torches flickering against the dark. Diego was there, part of the tour package, but he kept his distance, his usual charm replaced by a quiet unease. Sophie sat next to Matt, trying to spark conversation, but her efforts felt rehearsed, her laughter hollow. Matt ate in silence, his mind mapping out the next steps. He'd book a separate flight home, start looking for a new place in Austin, and consult a lawyer. The marriage he'd poured himself into was fracturing, and he wouldn't cling to the pieces. As dinner wound down, Diego approached Matt, his voice barely above a whisper. "I'm sorry, man. I should have stopped it sooner. I didn't mean for this to happen." Matt met his eyes, his expression hard but not cruel. "You told me the truth. That's enough." Diego nodded, stepping back, but the exchange didn't ease the weight on Matt's shoulders. Sophie, watching from the table, sensed the conversation's gravity. She stood, moving toward them, but Matt raised a hand, stopping her. "Not now," he said, his tone final. She froze, her face pale, and returned to her seat. The next day, Matt woke early, slipping out before Sophie stirred. He found a quiet cafe and booked a flight back to Austin for the following morning, separate from hers. He emailed the divorce attorney, outlining his situation in clipped, factual sentences. Then he called his best friend, Ryan, a fellow paramedic back home. "I'm coming back early," Matt said, his voice steady. Sophie messed up. "I'll need a place to crash for a bit." Ryan didn't pry, just offered his guest room. Matt hung up, feeling a strange clarity. He wasn't running, he was moving forward. When he returned to the hotel, Sophie was waiting, her eyes red from crying. "Where were you?" she asked, her voice trembling. "I've been texting you." Matt didn't soften. "I'm leaving tomorrow," he said. "Alone. We'll talk in Austin, but I need time." Sophie's pleas came fast, promises to change, to fix things, to be the wife he deserved. But Matt had heard enough. "You made a choice," he said. "Now I'm making mine." He walked past her, heading to the balcony, the ocean stretching endless before him. The trip, meant to reignite their spark, had instead exposed a fault line. Matt knew what came next, not revenge, but resolve. He'd save himself, just as he'd saved others, one deliberate step at a time. Sophie watched him go, the weight of her actions sinking in. She'd chased a fleeting thrill, and now the cost was clear. The Miami sun still shone, the waves still crashed, but the dream of their perfect marriage was slipping away, and no amount of apologies could pull it back. Matt's flight touched down in Austin just as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a faint glow over the city he'd called home for years. He moved through the airport with purpose, his duffel bag slung over his shoulder, his paramedic's discipline keeping his steps steady despite the ache in his chest. Sophie's betrayal, the kiss with Diego, the fracture in their trust, played on a loop in his mind, but he refused to let it consume him. He'd seen enough emergencies to know that chaos didn't end you, hesitation did. At baggage claim, his phone buzzed with texts from Sophie, a string of apologies and pleas to talk. He didn't reply. Instead, he called Ryan, his friend and fellow paramedic, who was waiting outside in his pickup. "You good?" Ryan asked as Matt climbed in. "Getting there," Matt said, his voice clipped. That was enough for now. Back in Miami, Sophie sat alone in their hotel room, the hum of the air conditioner filling the silence. Matt's early departure had left her reeling, her attempts to reach him met with nothing but read receipts. She'd spent the morning pacing, replaying their last conversation, his calm, cutting words, the way he'd looked through her rather than at her. The weight of her impulsive kiss with Diego pressed down, no longer a fleeting thrill, but a mistake that had unraveled everything. She booked her own flight back to Austin for the next day, determined to fix things, but doubt gnawed at her. Would Matt even listen? She packed her bag, her movements mechanical, and headed to the hotel's rooftop bar, hoping a change of scene would clear her head. Instead, the crowd's laughter and the clink of glasses only deepened her isolation. Matt crashed at Ryan's place, a small apartment cluttered with gym gear and paramedic manuals. Over beers, he laid out the story: Diego's confession, Sophie's excuses, his decision to leave. Ryan listened, nodding, no judgment. "You've got a plan?" he asked. Matt leaned back, staring at the ceiling. "Divorce. Clean break. I'm not dragging this out." Ryan clapped his shoulder. "You'll land on your feet. Always do." The next day, Matt met with the divorce attorney he'd emailed from Miami. In a small, no-frills office, he outlined his terms: split everything evenly, no alimony, no drama. The attorney nodded, jotting notes. "You're sure about this?" she asked. Matt's answer was firm. "I'm sure." He left the meeting with a weight lifted, not from relief but from action. He was moving forward, not wallowing. Sophie landed in Austin the following evening. Her stomach knotted as she drove to their shared house. The sight of it, their porch swing, the garden they'd planted together, hit her like a punch. She half expected Matt to be there, but the house was dark, his truck gone. She wandered through the rooms, her footsteps echoing, and found a note on the kitchen counter in Matt's neat handwriting. "I'm staying with Ryan. Lawyers handling the rest. We'll talk when papers are ready." No anger, no warmth, just finality. Sophie sank onto the couch, tears spilling over. She'd chased a spark in Miami, and now her marriage was ash. She tried calling him, left voicemails, sent texts promising to change, but her phone stayed silent. Desperate, she reached out to mutual friends, asking them to talk to Matt, to convince him to meet. Most were kind but distant, their responses vague. Word of her betrayal had spread, a quiet ripple through their tight-knit circle, and Sophie felt the chill of judgment. Matt threw himself into work, picking up extra shifts at the fire station. His crew noticed his focus, sharper, almost relentless. During a late-night call, he led a team through a multi-car pileup on I-35, stabilizing a trapped driver with precision that earned him a nod from his captain. "You're on fire, Thompson," the captain said. Matt gave a tight smile, the irony not lost on him. Work was his anchor, a place where trust was earned through action, not promises. He found a small apartment near downtown, signing the lease without hesitation. Each step, moving out, filing papers, rebuilding his routine, was a brick in the wall between him and the past. Sophie, meanwhile, tried to fill the void. She took on new event planning gigs, hoping work would drown out the guilt, but every client meeting felt hollow. At a community festival she'd organized, she overheard whispers, friends speculating about her and Matt, their voices tinged with pity or disapproval. She smiled through it, but the isolation grew. One night she drove to Ryan's place, hoping to catch Matt. Ryan answered the door, his expression guarded. "He's not here, Sophie," he said. "Give him space." She nodded, swallowing hard, and drove home, the weight of her choices heavier than ever. She started therapy, a small step toward understanding why she'd risked everything for a moment's thrill. The sessions were raw, her guilt laid bare, but they gave her a flicker of clarity. She'd betrayed not just Matt, but herself. Matt's attorney sent the divorce papers a week later, terms clear and fair. Sophie signed them, her hand shaking, knowing each signature was a nail in the coffin of their life together. She kept the house, unable to let go of the memories it held, but it felt like a museum of their past. Matt took his share and moved on, his new apartment sparse but his own. He didn't hate Sophie, he didn't have the energy for it. Instead, he focused on what he could control: his work, his future, his peace. The pain of her betrayal lingered, but he wouldn't let it define him. Sophie, alone in their old home, faced a harder truth: her actions had consequences, and no apology could undo them. The path to redemption, if it existed, would be long and solitary. 5 months after the divorce papers were signed, Matt stood on a rocky trail outside Denver, Colorado, his boots crunching against the gravel. He'd left Austin behind, taking a transfer to a new fire station where the mountains framed every shift. The move wasn't an escape, it was a rebuild. His new crew respected his focus, his ability to stay calm in chaos, a skill honed through years of paramedic work and sharpened by the betrayal that had upended his life. Sophie's kiss with Diego in Miami, The fracture of their marriage was a scar now, not a wound. Matt didn't dwell on it. He'd learned in his line of work that you don't linger on what's broken, you stabilize, move on, save what you can. In Denver, Matt found a rhythm. He led training drills for rookie firefighters, sharing tricks for navigating high-stakes rescues. Off-duty, he hiked, the altitude clearing his head. At a local coffee shop, he met Lena, a 30-year-old elementary school teacher with a quick wit and a steady presence. She'd been through her own betrayal years back, her ex leaving her for a co-worker. Their first date was simple: burgers at a food truck, stories swapped under string lights. Lena's honesty, her refusal to play games, felt like a lifeline. They took it slow, building trust through late-night talks and shared hikes. Matt wasn't looking to replace Sophie, but with Lena, he felt something he hadn't in years: ease. Back in Austin, Sophie woke each morning to the same house, its silence a reminder of what she'd lost. The porch swing creaked when she sat on it, the garden overgrown since Matt left. Her event planning business limped along. She was good at her job, but the spark was gone. Friends had drifted, their invitations drying up after word of her betrayal spread. She didn't blame them. The guilt of that night in Miami, the impulsive kiss with Diego, sat like a stone in her chest. Therapy helped, forcing her to face the restlessness that had driven her to cross that line. She chased the thrill, mistaking it for freedom, and paid the price. Determined to move forward, Sophie started volunteering at a local youth center, organizing art workshops for teens. The kids' energy, their raw honesty, gave her a purpose she hadn't felt in months. One afternoon, a shy 15-year-old showed her a sketch of a broken bridge, explaining it was how she felt after her parents' divorce. Sophie nodded, sharing a piece of her own story, not the details, but the regret. The girl listened, then hugged her. It wasn't absolution, but it was a start. Sophie began to see redemption not as a destination but a slow, deliberate path, paved with accountability. Matt, meanwhile, thrived in Denver. His crew threw a barbecue to celebrate his promotion to lead paramedic, a role he'd earned after guiding a team through a grueling wildfire rescue. Lena was there, cheering him on, her laughter blending with the crackle of the fire pit. Later, as they sat under the stars, she asked about Austin, about Sophie. Matt didn't dodge. "She made a choice," he said, his voice steady. "I made mine." Lena squeezed his hand, understanding the weight of moving on. Matt realized he wasn't just surviving, he was building something new, something honest. Sophie's life in Austin took on a quieter cadence. She stopped texting Matt, stopped hoping for a response. The divorce had been finalized cleanly, no fights, no demands. Matt had taken his half and left, asking for nothing more. She kept the house, but it felt less like a home and more like a museum of their past. At the youth center, she poured herself into the kids, helping them plan a community mural. One evening, a coworker mentioned hearing Matt had moved to Denver, that he was doing well. Sophie nodded, a pang in her chest, but no bitterness. She'd lost the right to know him anymore. One day, Sophie found an old photo of her and Matt at a charity run, their smiles wide, arms around each other. She didn't cry. Instead, she tucked it into a drawer, a reminder not of what was, but of what she'd learned. Her actions in Miami had consequences: losing Matt, losing friends, losing the life she'd taken for granted. But the youth center, the kids' laughter, the slow rebuild of her purpose, these were her steps towards something better. Not forgiveness from Matt, but from herself. In Denver, Matt hiked a new trail with Lena, the Rockies stretching before them. They paused at a lookout, the wind sharp and clean. "You ever think about going back?" Lena asked, meaning Austin. Matt shook his head. "Everything I need's right here." He meant it. The betrayal had cracked him open, but it hadn't broken him. He'd closed that chapter, not with anger, but with clarity. Justice wasn't about punishing Sophie, it was about choosing his own path, free of her shadow. Sophie, in Austin, finished the mural with the teens, the wall now a burst of color in a once dull lot. As she stepped back, watching the kids high-five, she felt a flicker of pride. She'd fallen, but she was standing again. The road ahead was long, but she'd walk it, carrying the weight of her choices and the hope of something new. For Matt, peace came in Denver's mountains, in Lena's steady presence, in a life rebuilt on his terms. For Sophie, it was the slow work of redemption, one honest step at a time.